The art for most of the game is going to be black and white, with the only bright colors being red and green. The purpose of the black and white design is to create an eerie feeling and a sense of hopelessness and confusion that the main character is experiencing due to memory loss. The red color is used to show blood, and the green color is used to show vegetation. The lighting will be dimmed to make it difficult for the main character to see what may be hiding in the shadows, giving opportunity for jump scares. The water will be pitch black to create a feeling of uneasiness from not being able to see what is within the water. The game takes place in a large city that is covered with overgrown vegetation, so there will be a lot of tall buildings that are tattered and covered with plants. There is an active war between the Unari and the Lumen, so there will be remains of both scattered throughout the main battlefield and the rest of the city.
The music for the game would be a great mix of symphonic and techno music. The symphonic elements will bring in an emotional feeling for the player. It will be soft for the exploration part of the game. The orchestra would bring the player immersion feelings. It will have some influence like Skyrim. The electronic music will be more action-packed for the player to get their heart pumping. The techno music will have a great influence from violinist Taylor Davis. Both styles of music will set up a great playstyle for the robotic character.
We start the player out in a situation where the main character wakes up damaged and has no recollection of the preceding events and has multiple warnings of damaged systems. They look up and see a robot in its final moments laying on the floor. The player removes that robot's scanner module and replaces their own critically damaged scanner. This opens up the HUD for the player, and multiple waypoints appear on the compass, leading to replacements for the other systems. Once the player has reached all of those waypoints, they round a corner and see a war-torn city street in an ongoing battle between more robot enforcers and the human resistance. The player looks down at their hand and sees it begins to transform into a gun. Instinctively, they begin to fire back. The player fights alongside fellow robots until all the humans have been dealt with. Afterwards, the player gets a holographic message on their HUD, being ordered back to base. When the player arrives at base, they will walk into a large room filled with other robots and see someone standing above the robots giving out orders. The player's next mission will introduce the stealth mechanics of the game and the option of non-violent takedowns. They will have to clear out a building and gather intel inside the building, then meet up with the group they were sent with to continue the mission. The player is then sent to the outpost that they discovered alone and will have the option to try and sneak through or go guns blazing. After the outpost is cleared, the player will see a document with a signature on it that causes them to have a glitch, and then see a flashback of a little girl. Next mission, the player is sent to a garage where the Resistance is attempting to build drones of their own to combat the Lumen robot enforcers. After clearing this outpost, the player will then see a tool that activates another flashback, this time of his creator and why the enforcers were made originally. These flashbacks are used to establish an emotional connection to both of these characters, the creator and the little girl. A few missions later, we have the Lumen Force capturing the leader of the Resistance, the little girl, and the player is given an option to try and save the girl or side with the creator. If they choose to side with the creator, it will result in the girl getting away thanks to an attack by the Resistance, and if they choose to save the girl, she and the player will escape together. Doing either of these will fully restore the player's memory core. The creator or leader will then explain their version of the past and why they are fighting to the player, and the final few missions will be played out, leading to the final battle. The final battle will be against either the creator of the Lumen Force or the leader of the Resistance, ending with a good and bad ending, respectively.
Team Fossa has decided that our general gameplay will be based around the gameplay found in the first-person shooter and role-playing game genres, while also incorporating elements from decision-making games such as Until Dawn and the games made by Telltale Games. The gameplay will have the player character, Robot, traversing through a war-torn world in search of their memories, with multiple means of movement, such as walking, running, and using a grappling hook. As the player explores the world, they will be presented with numerous combat and Npc encounters, as well as items to pick up and craft with. Combat encounters will have the player defending and fighting against different enemies, with the player using non-lethal weapons and gear. Npc encounters will allow the player to converse with NPCs in order to progress the story. These encounters will present the player with the ability to make various dialogue and action choices that will affect future story points. Players will also find useful items scattered around the world that will help them to craft useful equipment.
We wanted the player to feel immersed in their environment with the ability to interact with and actively see the results of decisions made in Cypher City. The mechanics utilized closely resemble those found in common FPS RPGs, while still providing fun and unique ways to interact with the world. The player is equipped with an electromagnetic stun gun and an energy shield that can each be used defensively, offensively, and as utility to interact with items throughout the game world. To enhance movement through the levels and to provide opportunities for players to approach encounters in different ways, we equip the character with a grappling hook and a passive scanning radar that identifies points of interest, enemies, and custom quest markers. All of these abilities consume small amounts of character's energy, and all of these can be upgraded and tailored to different playstyles. We will introduce these mechanics to the player very early on in the game to allow them to gain confidence and get comfortable using them. As the game progresses, it will become more and more important to employ these mechanics in various ways in order to succeed. Throughout the campaign, the player will be interacting with items throughout the world and NPCs that will guide the player to quests, hidden items, etc. Decisions made by the player will affect the NPC's attitude towards and their willingness to assist them. The intent is to make every action and decision made by the player bear consequence, both positive and negative.
I designed the systems based off of the keep it simple principle, so that the programming and the flowcharts would be easy to follow and that it wouldn't be slowed down by all the data at once. I split the systems into two parts, function and visual. The visual was handled using PowerPoint, while the function was handled using Excel and coding. By focusing on the keep it simple principle, I was able to streamline the process of making the charts, making the program, making the Excel sheet, making the PowerPoint, so that it would be easier for the group and myself. The reason why I'm using the keep it simple is so that the computer is not slowed down by all the data at once. It can focus on one task at a time, so it's a lot smoother for the player and it's a lot easier to make when we do it like that. Because handling a lot of variables all at once is confusing, time wasting, and it boggles and it slows down the computing process of whatever system you're on.
For this level, the player goal is to leave the starting area and to move towards object of interest outside of the starting area. The level will take place in a post-apocalyptic city of Cypher. The player is funneled into the level of gradually increasing difficulty. The player is introduced to two distinct enemy factions. At the start of the level, a battle is visible just outside the game's introduction area. The setting is for this level is a war-torn building where the player is motivated to explore mechanics and collectibles while defeating enemies. This level is inspired by the game Tokyo Jungle style of abandoned forsaken metropolis environment. The gameplay loop for levels in this game starts with the player receiving a call to action from a narrative cutscene and ends with the narrative cutscene granting the player progression throughout each of the story arcs.
We decided to make this game a first-person shooter with some RPG elements. We selected the first-person shooter style to make the player feel more connected to the robot, and the RPG style to add some replayability to the game. Both combined will create an opportunity for different styles of play and multiple playthroughs of the game.
The platforms for this game will include Steam, Electronic Arts, Google Stadia, and Epic Games for PC, as well as current generation consoles such as the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. Developing for PC and console platforms will maximize the reach of our adoption goals for our target demographic ages ranged from 13 to 40. We chose to exclude the mobile market because our game will be a first-person shooter. It would be impractical to implement the game mechanics required for this project. Narrative engagement and time investment are needed for the players to have meaningful play sessions. While this project is developed to be a single-player experience, we want the players to use the social features on each platform to help organically grow our audience, thus boosting sales for the long term and helping build a community following for the studio's future projects.
This is Cypher City. Thank you for listening.